Imagine just for a moment that you achieve every personal goal you've ever set for yourself.
Right, like the absolute ultimate dream scenario.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this right now, just picture it. You have perfect health, you have limitless wealth, and a mind with complete knowledge of the universe.
Sounds pretty amazing so far.
Oh, it's great, but here's the massive catch. You are the only person left on Earth.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, you are completely, utterly alone. So the question is, would you actually be happy?
You know, most people's instinct is to say yes for about, maybe 5 minutes, and then the reality really sets in.
Right, because it's a nightmare.
It really is.
Yeah.
On paper, you've won the lottery of existence, but functionally, it's the ultimate be careful what you wish for scenario, because something structural to the human experience is just completely gone.
And that tension right there is the core of what we were exploring today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
This is a really fun one.
It is. This is the 9th installment in our Introduction to Philosophy series, and we are looking at why relationships matter. We have an absolutely fascinating stack of sources for you today.
Yeah, it's this brilliant mix of ancient Greek ethics, modern philosophy of love, and some really cutting-edge psychological theory.
Exactly. And our mission today is to unpack this age-old question. Can anyone truly flourish as a solo act, or does becoming fully human absolutely require friendship, love, and community?
It's something philosophers have wrestled with for centuries.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to figure out the mechanics of why relationships actually matter, we first have to figure out what it actually means to have a good life.
Right, and before we can begin to evaluate why we might need other people, we have to establish a working definition for the word flourish.
Which is trickier than it sounds.
Way trickier, because if you ask someone on the street today what it means to be happy, they will almost always describe a fleeting mood.
Right, like getting a promotion or eating a really great meal.
Exactly. We think of happiness as just feeling a temporary rush of positive emotion. But the ancient Greeks had a much more rigorous concept for human flourishing. They called it eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds incredibly heavy.
It is. We are miles away from the dopamine hit you get from seeing a notification on your phone.
Good to know. So what is it then?
Well, eudaimonia refers to a complete, well-lived life taken as a whole. It's about functioning optimally as a human being over the span of decades.
Wow, over decades, not just a good Tuesday.
Exactly. Now, the mechanics of how to actually achieve that state sparked massive debates. For instance, the philosopher Epicurus argued for a strategy of static pleasure.
Static pleasure, what does that mean?
Well, his version of happiness wasn't about wild partying. It was a highly risk-averse strategy of achieving tranquility by basically just avoiding pain.
Okay, so like keeping your head down and minimizing your desires.
Exactly. Just stay undisturbed.
That feels a bit like hiding from the world. But the sources also bring in the Stoics, who took things in an even more extreme direction.
Oh yeah, a very inward-facing direction. The Stoics constructed a philosophy where virtue alone is the sole requirement for happiness.
Virtue alone, so nothing else matters.
Right. They posited that if you cultivated a truly virtuous internal character, your external circumstances became entirely irrelevant.
Which sounds nice in theory, but...
Well, they famously argued that a perfectly virtuous person could literally be tortured on the rack, suffering immense physical agony, and still be considered happy.
Wait, happy while being tortured?
Happy in the sense of eudaimonia, yeah. Because their internal moral compass remained pristine and unbroken.
Yeah, I really have to push back on that Stoic ideal of solitary virtue. I mean, think about it from the perspective of an artist.
Okay, how so?
If happiness is strictly a solo internal state, it's like being a brilliant musician playing the most beautiful, flawless symphony in a soundproof room forever.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Right, like you might have perfect technique, you might be totally virtuous in your playing, but if nobody ever hears it, if it never moves another person, isn't there an essential relational piece missing?
Well, Aristotle would enthusiastically back you up on that. He sharply disagreed with the Stoic idea that a person could flourish on the torture rack.
Yeah, I'm Team Aristotle on this one.
He definitely didn't think you could achieve eudaimonia in a soundproof room either. He established the famous premise that humans are inherently biologically social animals.
Which we hear a lot today.
Right. In his ethical framework, a completely solitary life is fit only for gods and beasts.
Gods and beasts, that's a great line.
It really is. He argued that true human flourishing absolutely requires what he called external goods, specifically prioritizing friends and family. You just cannot be a fully realized human in a vacuum.
That makes a lot of sense.
And if you fast forward a couple of millennia, Karl Marx actually expands on Aristotle's foundation by introducing the concept of our species being.
I've heard that phrase, species being, but it usually gets thrown around in economics. How does it apply to our need for relationships?
Well, Marx theorized that to be an individuated person, to actually have a distinct personality, is an activity of our species.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about the mechanics of human traits. Take a concept like humor. You can't truly realize your faculty for being funny in a vacuum. You need an audience.
Right, someone to bounce the joke off of.
Exactly, someone whose laughter validates the attempt. Language requires a listener. Empathy requires someone in need.
So we literally cannot realize our own internal faculties without society acting as a mirror.
Yes, we need other people to show us who we are.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but it also creates a bit of a friction point for me.
Oh, yeah. What's the friction?
Well, if we accept that we're inherently social animals and society is our mirror, how exactly do specific individual people give our lives meaning?
What do you mean by specific people?
Like if you were just trying to survive, say you're marooned on a desert island, your biological drive would instantly kick in, right? You'd find fresh water, you'd build a shelter out of palm fronds.
Sure, basic survival instinct.
Yeah, so why isn't sheer survival or basic self-interest enough of a motor to keep us going? Why do we need the relationship part?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, pure self-interest is an incredibly powerful biological motor. It will keep your lungs breathing and your heart beating.
Yeah.
But the philosopher Susan Wolf argues that mere biology doesn't give you a reason to endure the difficulty of living.
So it's about the reason.
Exactly. Wolf's thesis is that pure self-interest fails to generate actual meaning. Instead, she argues that love, which she defines as caring deeply for someone else, entirely for their own sake, is what roots us motivationally to the world.
Roots us motivationally to the world.
Yeah.
I love that imagery. It implies that without those connections, we're just sort of floating away into the ether.
It's the difference between merely existing and having a stake in reality. And to test this, the sources bring up one of the most famous thought experiments in philosophy.
Oh, I love a good thought experiment. Which one?
The experience machine. I want you to picture this. Imagine a supercomputer simulation that you can plug your brain into. And once you're inside, your memory of entering the machine is wiped.
Okay, so I don't know it's fake.
Right. You experience a simulated life where you feel perfectly loved, totally respected, and completely fulfilled. Every interaction is flawlessly tailored to make you feel valued.
And to my brain, floating in this vat, or hooked up to these cables, it feels 100% real.
The neural pathways are firing exactly as they would in real life. There is zero physical difference in how your brain processes it.
Wow.
Yet when philosophers present this scenario, the overwhelming majority of people refuse to permanently plug into the machine. We naturally recoil from the idea.
Wait, really? But it sounds perfect. Why wouldn't we want that?
Because we fundamentally do not just want the internal neurochemical feeling of being loved. We want to be embedded in a real shared world where the person we love actually exists.
Well, so the reality part is crucial.
Yes, where they have their own independent mind and where they are genuinely flourishing. We want the truth of the connection, not just the sensation of it.
I'm trying to square this with thinkers like Hobbes and Locke. In a lot of classical philosophy, self-preservation is painted as the absolute center of human life.
Right, the foundation of the social contract.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the foundation of all our laws.
Yeah.
So can't the raw drive to just not die be enough of a root to keep us anchored to the world?
Well, Hobbes and Locke were designing political frameworks to keep humans from destroying each other in a chaotic state of nature. Their baseline was just avoiding violent death.
Which is a good goal, but
simply avoiding death is a terribly low bar for human existence. I mean, you can survive in a concrete underground bunker for 80 years, eating rations and avoiding all danger.
that sounds miserable.
Exactly, because without those motivational roots, the specific people you love and care for that survival feels hollow. It lacks the meaning that justifies the effort of surviving in the first place.
So you need a tether to the outside world.
And love is the strongest tether we have.
Okay, if true connection is the tether that anchors us to reality, I want to get into the nuts and bolts of how we actually forge these bonds, because human relationships aren't abstract concepts. They're famously messy.
Very messy.
The sources dive into the work of philosopher Raja Halwani, who breaks down the mechanics of romantic love into two distinct phases. He calls them RL1 and RL2.
And this framework is so relatable for anyone who has ever dated.
Yes, so tell us about RL1.
Hawani's framework strips away a lot of the mysticism around romance. RL1 represents the passionate, erotic stage of love. It is the euphoric, obsessive phase characterized by intense sexual desire and a constant craving for the other person's presence.
Like the honeymoon phase.
Exactly. But the philosophical kicker here is that Hawani categorizes RL1 as fundamentally self-directed.
Like passionate head-over-heels love is actually selfish.
From a structural standpoint, yes. In the RL1 phase, the lover feels an acute sense of emptiness or listlessness when the beloved isn't around.
Oh, I see.
So the drive to secure the partner to possess them is actually an attempt to satisfy the lover's own desires and cure their own emptiness.
That is a harsh truth.
It is. Furthermore, Hawani points out that RL1 is not what philosophers call reason responsive.
Okay, I need you to translate reason responsive for us.
It means your emotional state does not respond to rational evidence. If you are deep in the throes of RL1, your friends could sit you down with a literal PowerPoint presentation showing you that your new partner is financially reckless, terribly unkind to waiters, and entirely incompatible with your lifestyle.
And you just ignore it.
You simply will not care. The love ignores the reasons. It also lacks a foundation of genuine commitment, even if the lovers dramatically claim they will be together forever.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because RL1 is essentially the plot of every Hollywood rom-com, every dramatic pop song, every novel about running through an airport to stop a plane.
Oh, absolutely. It's all fireworks and adrenaline.
But RL2, according to Hawani's framework, is the deeply unglamorous sequel. It's sitting at the kitchen table paying a mortgage or holding a bucket for your partner when they have a terrible stomach flu.
That is the exact reality of RL2. It represents companionate or settled love.
The settled phase.
Right. Hawani defines RL2 not as a fleeting passion, but as a dispositional emotion. Think of RL1 as the weather, like a sudden violent thunderstorm. RL2 is the climate. It's a baseline setting.
I love that analogy.
It is calmer, built on a shared history, genuine commitment, and what he terms robust concern.
Let's break down robust concern. Does that mean I'm not just keeping my partner around because they cure my boredom? I actually care about their well-being independent of how it affects me.
Precisely. In an RL2 relationship, you want your beloved to flourish entirely for their own sake.
Even if it's inconvenient for me.
Right. Like if they get an amazing job opportunity that requires you to make a personal sacrifice, robust concern motivates you to support them anyway.
Wow, that's a big shift.
And crucially, unlike RL1, RL2 is reason responsive.
So the PowerPoint presentation would actually work in RL2.
Exactly. If your partner over time fundamentally changes their character, if they become consistently cruel or abusive, your love will gradually process that rational evidence and fade. It is anchored in reality, not in a projected fantasy.
The million-dollar question for anyone listening to this is how we actually cross that bridge.
It's the hardest part.
Yeah. How does a selfish, obsessive thunderstorm of RL1 transform into the selfless, grounded climate of RL2? Because looking at the divorce rates, a lot of relationships just fizzle out when the fireworks stop.
Well, the mechanism for that transition is discovery and endorsement. The initial attraction might be based on how the person makes you feel, but over time you have to discover properties in your partner that hold independent value.
Like what kind of properties?
You notice how patient they are with a sick pet or how ethically they handle a crisis at work. You see their actual character and then you actively endorse that character.
So it's an active choice.
Yes, you move from a passive state of being overwhelmed by passion to an active, rational commitment to who this person truly is.
I'm tracking with you. But transitioning from a self-serving desire to a robust, selfless concern requires a massive shift in our own identity. We essentially have to tear down the walls of our independence, which makes us uncomfortably vulnerable.
It does. Entering RL2 effectively ends your status as a completely independent agent. The philosopher Robert Nozick describes this transition as the formation of a we.
The formation of a we.
Yes. When you truly love someone in this settled way, you voluntarily relinquish a significant portion of your individual autonomy to create a new shared identity.
So the rigid boundaries of the self begin to blur.
Exactly. You stop making decisions through the lens of what is best for me and start calculating what is best for us.
The sources bring up Jaworska and Wunderli's self-alteration criterion here, and I have to admit, I got a little stuck on this concept.
It's a complex one.
They argue that in true love, it goes way past empathy. They say that if something happens to the person you love, your functioning as an agent is directly compromised. Break that down for me. What does functioning as an agent actually mean in plain English?
What's fascinating here is how literal they are being. Functioning as an agent means your basic capacity to navigate the world, make decisions, and lead a meaningful life. Dworska and Wunderlich argue that when you intertwine your identity with someone else, they literally become part of your internal architecture.
Wow, literally part of you.
Yeah. If your partner suffers a catastrophic setback, or if you lose them entirely, you don't merely feel sad for them, you lose your bearings.
Oh, I see.
Your ability to get out of bed, make a to-do list, or care about your career is fundamentally damaged because the structure of your own self has been altered.
That is an incredibly heavy level of entanglement.
Yeah.
And it introduces a completely different dynamic when we talk about a parent's love for a child.
Yes, it completely changes the dynamic.
The philosopher Christopher Hamilton makes a brilliant point in the sources. We just talked about transitioning to RL2 by discovering and endorsing a partner's valuable character traits. But you can't do that with a newborn baby. They don't have character traits yet.
Right, a newborn hasn't developed virtues, a work ethic, or a sense of humor.
So how does that work?
Hamilton points out that a mother's love for an infant operates on a different, profound ethical level. It is a pure recognition of the infant as a unique, irreplaceable individual devoid of any conditional evaluation of their properties.
It is pure recognition.
Yet it creates the ultimate version of that self-alteration we just discussed. The mother's entire sense of self, her basic functioning in the world, becomes irrevocably entangled with the child's mere existence.
Which brings me to a massive paradox. I really need to push back on this whole philosophical premise of human flourishing.
Okay, lay it on me.
We started this deep dive talking about Aristotle's eudaimonia, the ultimate well-lived life. But everything you've just described, the blurring of boundaries, the self-alteration, the fact that losing someone can destroy my ability to function sounds incredibly dangerous.
This is dangerous.
Are the philosophers seriously arguing that to achieve optimal flourishing, we have to expose ourselves to potentially life-destroying heartbreak? We have to basically hand over the keys to our own psychological safety.
It is the central paradox of the human condition, but the philosophical consensus leans heavily toward yes.
Really?
Tying your identity to others removes your armor. It completely strips away the safety of solitary independence. But the reason thinkers argue this vulnerability is ultimately good for us is that it serves as the primary engine for our moral and autonomous growth. You just cannot grow while wearing armor.
I'm going to need you to connect those dots for me. How does giving up my independence and becoming vulnerable to heartbreak lead to moral growth?
Let's look at the work of philosophers David Velleman and Troy Jolimore. They categorize love not just as an emotion, but as a moral mechanism.
A moral mechanism.
Yes, when you truly love someone, you experience what they call an arresting awareness of the other person's fundamental value and personhood.
An arresting awareness. Like walking down a busy street and suddenly being struck by the realization that every stranger walking past you has a life just as complex, painful, and vivid as your own. It just stops you in your tracks.
That exact sensation, but magnified and sustained over years with a specific person. The novelist and philosopher Iris Murdoch called this the just and loving gaze.
The just and loving gaze.
By our nature, humans tend towards selfishness. We naturally live inside an egocentric fantasy where we are the main character and everyone around us is basically a two-dimensional supporting actor there to serve our plotline.
Guilty as charged.
We all do it. The just and loving gaze is the moral exercise of pulling yourself out of that selfish fantasy. It forces you to recognize the deep, complex reality of another human being whose needs are just as urgent as your own.
So love isn't just a feeling, it's an active, daily, ethical exercise. You are practicing the art of seeing someone else as entirely real.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it. And the philosopher Nora Isolde Kreft takes this dynamic one step further into the realm of autonomy.
Autonomy. How so?
She theorizes that at its core, love is a desire for deep conversation about fundamental values. When you love someone, you possess a burning desire to engage with how they see the world. This raises an important question, though. If you're constantly engaging with someone else's perspective, blurring your boundaries, and forming a mirror of it, don't you risk losing your own individual identity entirely?
That's exactly what I've been worrying about. You just meld into the other person.
Kraft argues the exact opposite occurs, actually. This deep entanglement actually promotes your autonomy.
Wait, it promotes it.
Think about the mechanics of a deep, value-driven conversation with someone you respect immensely. To engage with them authentically, you are forced to figure out what you actually believe.
Oh, I see.
You have to evaluate your own morals, your own stances, your own perspective. You cannot bring your full self to a meaningful relationship if you haven't done the work to figure out who your full self is.
That makes a ton of sense.
So, ironically, being deeply tethered to someone else provides the motivation to become more clearly and distinctly yourself.
So what does this all mean for us? When we boil all these theories down, the grand takeaway is that the lone wolf ideal we see so often in pop culture is basically a complete myth.
100% a myth.
That initial scenario we painted, standing alone on Earth with all the wealth and health imaginable, it wouldn't be a paradise. It would be a psychological prison.
Utterly solitary confinement.
We don't just need people around to help us gather food or build shelters. We literally need them to help construct the architecture of our own souls.
We need other people to pull us out of our natural egocentrism, to hold up a mirror to our faculties, to force us to define our internal values, and to give us a motivational route that justifies the effort of living.
We started this deep dive exploring whether anyone could achieve true happiness alone, and looking at the massive stack of sources we've unpacked, from Aristotle's demand for external goods to Susan Wolt's concept of motivational ruse, right through to Helwani's grounded RL2 companionate love and Jaworska's self-alteration, the evidence points overwhelmingly in one direction.
And what's that?
We absolutely fundamentally require others. Our individuality is not compromised or threatened by deep relationships. On the contrary, our individuality can only be fully realized through them.
It shifts the entire paradigm. We are not diminished by our attachments, we are expanded by them. The boundaries of who we are grow to encompass the people we care for.
But that expansion leaves us with one lingering and perhaps slightly haunting thought to end on today.
Okay, what's the thought?
We've spent this time establishing that our identities, our sense of agency, and our capacity to flourish are deeply and permanently intertwined with the specific people we choose to love.
Right.
And we know from Jaworska and Wonderly that losing those people compromises our very functioning as agents in the world. So what happens to who we are when we inevitably outlive the people we love?
Oh, wow.
Does a literal piece of our personhood die alongside them? Or does the act of having loved them permanently alter the architecture of our soul, allowing them to live on in how we engage with the rest of the world?
That is a heavy question.
Think back to that solitary person standing on an empty earth with everything they could ever want, without someone to share it with. Who are they really? Something to think about.